Welcome to the Why Music podcast, where we talk to independent artists about their journeys, the inspirations behind their music, and ultimately why they make music. This next artist is a pop artist and producer who's taken her journey from Virginia all the way up to Brooklyn. Striving to create sonic dreamscapes and challenge music as we know it, she's taking the industry by storm one day at a time. With inspirations like Grimes and Lorde, she's a true force to be reckoned with. Welcome, Kate.
Wow. Thank you. What a lovely intro. I'm happy to be here.
So I always like to kick things off with just kind of why don't you tell me about a little bit of how your journey with music kind of all started?
Yeah. So I've always really liked to sing, as many children do. And I think I learned very early on that my voice has a very distinct tonal quality to it, which can come with its own challenges. Like I remember in elementary school, sometimes I would sing in the little choir and all the little kids would turn around and be like, what is that noise? But anyway, so I always knew I loved music. I learned how to play a bit of guitar and piano, but things didn't really click for me until I found out about music production in high school. And then everything was so great because I realized, you know what, it doesn't matter if I don't have, quote unquote, the typical pop voice. If I can craft the world that I want around it, then that's something that really excites me. So from there, I just became absolutely obsessed with it.
So at what point in that kind of timeline did you start like writing music? Was that a development within the once you discovered music production? Was that something that you started to dabble with before that?
Yeah, so I started writing, I think I wrote my first song when I was like 12 or 13. I kind of regret it, but pretty much all of my terrible first drafts of songs are cataloged through my YouTube channel. I used to be like YouTube cover girl type beat. There was definitely a whole genre of that back in the day. So I participated in that and I started songwriting, but then I found out about music production maybe like a couple years into it. Um, and then I think writing songs was always super fun, but I was always drawn to like more alternative stuff that had electronic elements. So once I found out that that was possible, that I could make that myself, then it just all kind of shifted to being more focused on music production.
So with that kind of background, because a lot of people that write music don't often necessarily produce their own stuff. You get some that do, some that don't. A lot of people just want to do the writing part and ship the rest off to somebody else. Do you think that kind of taking that initiative and having the production be kind of on the forefront for you, do you think that influences the way that you write music? Like, do you take things in a more sonic perspective, or do you think like, are lyrics still like a top priority? Like, has that kind of affected your writing style?
Yeah, that's a great question. It definitely does. I think I've always, when people ask me what I do, I always say producer first because that's really, really important to me. I've always admired great songwriters, but a lot of times, I will start with the beat and then write to it. So I guess a lot of times the beat ends up coming first. I feel like naturally a lot of emotions are easier for me to express with sounds first and then figure out the words to it later. But yeah, I guess with songwriting, I try not to get too in my head about it and just try and be honest. Um, yeah.
It's interesting that the like production kind of comes first and then the words just kind of fill in as you go. Um, when did you really decide to kind of commit to pursuing this as like an artistry beyond just like kind of having fun with it, experimenting, that kind of thing?
Yeah. I guess it wasn't super linear. I discovered music production when I was like 14. And then by the time, for whatever reason, I was like, okay, I need to make a completed beat every single week. And then by the time I was 16, just after doing that, I was like, oh my gosh, I love this so much. I'm going to do it somehow, some way. And then since I was in high school, there were a lot of questions of, are you going to go to college? What are your next steps? And because I was confronted with so many of those questions, it was easier for me to take a stance of like, this is a priority for me, I suppose. So, yeah.
No, that makes sense. I mean, having the discipline to be like, I'm going to do this every week. A lot of people don't have that, let alone at that like teenage age. So
I think I was just bored, but I appreciate that. Yeah.
Hey, whatever makes it happen, that's all that
Yeah,
matters.
absolutely.
What do you think often inspires a lot of your writing? And that obviously can come from the perspective of where you get these new ideas sonically versus lyrically. It can go either way.
I think just coping with the world, man. Escapism is so necessary. And if I didn't have music myself to uh disassociate with, I don't feel like I would be as sane as I am. So I guess, I write about the typical things like love and heartbreak, but also just confronting. I have a big pain point with religion and certain power structures. And input makes output, I guess, but a lot of times it's just me coping with whatever I happen to be triggered by that week.
I mean, easy enough, I guess.
Yeah.
Do you think that I mean, a lot of times we write from our own personal experiences. Do you think that when you are like articulating whatever the idea is, what kind of direction do you try and take it, as far as like, are you just trying to straight up tell your story? Are you trying to kind of shape it in the way of like putting across an overall message? Like, where you get from that like starting point, what kind of takes it from there?
Yeah. So I think a lot of times it ends up being very first person account, but as of late, I've just really been having a good time exploring outside of or or hyper focusing on, different sides of myself that I wouldn't really consider a part of my central personality, I guess. Like, for example, I have this song out called Do You Want to Dance? And it's basically the whole narration is just being like a super bratty, like superficial, I don't care about anything except me and being relevant and whatever. And maybe that is a part of my subconscious, but regardless, I like the idea of having the freedom to take on different characters. That's like the best thing about art, is you kind of like, as long as you're not being a terrible human, you kind of have more of an agency to explore and unpack different parts of yourselves or different people maybe who you don't understand exactly. And it's just kind of like a free space for exploration.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same way that like with books and stuff like that. Like, you get these characters, but the characters aren't necessarily exactly what matters. It's like the journey they're on, the story they're telling, the message that you should really be taking away from the whole thing that matters more than it being John and Steve, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah. Like the other day, have you heard the song He Hit Me and It Felt Like a Kiss? It's like a song from the 60s. It's
I have not.
terrible. It's
It sounds
absolutely
terrible.
terrible. It is. And but the whole point, like the reason why they made that song is it's such an observation. And I think it's just, I love art that I think it's great when art can be honest and straightforward, but I also love art that the message is in how it makes you feel and like the cognitive dissonance between that. And I just think that song is brilliant because of it's just a documentation, and the meaning you get from it is how much ick you feel from experiencing that situation. I think that's so cool.
Yeah, there's some crazy shit out there, but it's really, like I said, it just boils down to what is the overall kind of picture we're painting here.
Absolutely, yeah.
If you had to create a new genre around your style of music, what would it be called?
Uh, that is so tough. I don't know. I feel like I fall in love with a different genre every 2 months. Like like 3 months ago, I was really into like reggaeton and ethereal. And like right now, I've just been listening to like folk music again. So I don't I really couldn't tell you. I love so many genres that already exist, but I guess I hope I can continue to blend different elements and yeah, I don't know. I guess I have a philosophy that a lot of art is like iterative, and I'm just like making a collage of my interests. So I don't know if I'd ever create anything really new other than just I'm like making a new smoothie, I guess. Maybe smoothie. Smoothie's a good name. There we go.
Well, going off of that, do you think that like when you go through these different genre style phases of listening, do you think that that shows through in your writing?
Yes. Oh my gosh. I was approached by a label recently, and my next project has like I said, like it has like this dark like reggaeton track, and then I have like a folk track also, which is not marketable and makes absolutely no sense. So they were like, no. And I was like, all right, I mean, fair. So um yeah, it definitely does. I don't know if it's to my benefit, but yeah, I'm always gonna make what I make, and that's just that.
I mean, at the end of the day, if you're just doing what you want to be doing, who really cares?
Oh,
The label
absolutely.
cares, but like that's not your problem.
No. My
It's
number
their
one
problem.
priority always is like I want to always enjoy making music. So yeah.
If you're not enjoying it,
What's the
what's
point?
what's the point?
Yeah.
Um, do you ever think that like I mean, obviously those kind of don't like those two tracks don't exactly coincide with each other, but do you ever like do you still feel like it has a sense of like Kate on it? Like, do you think it's very like clearly like if somebody were to listen to those two tracks like back to back, yeah, they don't sound anything alike, but do you think that someone would still be able to understand that it's from the same person?
I think so. And I think that's one of the reasons why I've come to be more accepting of my voice is because it's so distinct. It can kind of tie things more together, even
Hmm.
if they're placed in different sonic environments. But yeah, and I hope most of the time, even if they sound very different, like genre wise, a lot of I try and make my projects more thematic. So the lyrical content a lot of times is exploring some of like similar themes. So in that way.
Yeah, I mean, as long as there's a like core piece of it that kind of ties it all together, I think some sort of exploration, as little or as much as you desire, isn't a bad thing because what's the point if it's not, you know?
Yeah, my favorite artists are the ones who just go
Do
for it
something new every time.
and do whatever. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's so cool.
Is there a release or a song that you've put out that you think best embodies who you are as an artist? Like in the way of if you had to sell somebody on you as an artist, kind of convince someone to be your fan, you had one song to show them, what song would you choose?
Ooh, that's so challenging. I guess I would say, um, Hmm. I have two answers, which I know is wrong, but I'm gonna give them anyway. So if they're more pop facing, I would say projections. And
Okay.
if they're more alternative facing, I would say all the voices in my head. I guess the thing that's most important to me about my music is I want to create intersection between like pop music because I love pop music and also some of the more electronic leaning experimental stuff. And so yeah, I feel like those are both good embodiments of that, but on slightly different sides of that spectrum.
Yeah, I mean it is a little bit challenging to kind of pick out one song because you don't know who you're dealing with necessarily.
Yeah.
Because I mean, there will be a song that sits at the top of your Spotify profile, but that doesn't mean that that's the song for everyone.
Oh my gosh, yeah. And it's so frustrating too when you're like, that's not the one. But, people connect to
You are
what they
not the
connect
first
to.
person to say that on here. Everybody's like the song that like is my most popular is probably one of my least favorite.
Yes.
I don't know why that is.
It
I think it's
happens.
because we just like know what went into it. That one might have been a little shithead to try and make,
Yes.
but for whatever
Yes.
reason, it never seems to align.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, no. I mean, legit, my top song on Spotify, I went through a year where I was releasing a single every month where I still do all the production on my own, but I was also like mixing and mastering on my
Hmm.
own, which I wouldn't do if I didn't have, if I had a budget. But yeah, I like the song, but it's definitely I just don't feel like it's my bestest, my best work. But yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting how that kind of transpires because you never really know what it is that makes a song your top song. It's just that's maybe the one
Yeah.
that reached the most people, not necessarily
And
even
now
was the most
things
liked.
Yeah, and now things that are years old can suddenly like gain popularity, which is
Oh
kind of
yeah.
cool.
No,
So,
I think that's great, especially as someone who's never really promoted their own releases. Jumping back in and just kind of being like, because it's new to people, if it's something that
yeah,
you haven't really gotten any traction with, it's new. They don't need to
right.
know that it's like a year or two old.
Yes,
That's the world we live in, and I think that's great.
absolutely. I don't see like the reason why we put so much hype and importance around release day because like the real work comes after it.
Yeah,
And yeah,
yeah. I think there has also been a just general shift from promoting, oh, this is coming out in like 3 weeks or 2 weeks, or this comes out on Friday, to I just dropped this because
yeah,
it's easier to promote something that's already accessible. But
absolutely.
that's my 2 cents for the day. Um, if you had to pick two or three artists that you think your music is like a combination of, who would you choose?
I would say Lorde, Grimes, and FK Twigs because I love them.
um, I'm not familiar with FK Twix, but as far as those three, is there certain elements from each of them that you think kind of shows through? Is it like, is there some overlap? How does that kind of like, how do you like, what is it that makes you choose those options besides the fact that you love them?
I think they're just very they're all strong uh female voices with like not typical um vocals, I guess.
Hmm.
They're pretty experimental in that way, and like in Grimes and FK Twigs case, they are both very involved in the music production itself, which really resonates with me. And Lorde was like the first pop star, I guess, that I ever really felt like I could deeply connect to.
Hmm.
And also is just has such a vision for her work and is uncompromising about what she wants to do, which I really respect, especially when she came out at such a young age. So, yeah.
No, I mean, it all makes sense. A lot of times your influences are kind of what you will reflect. And so the music that you're drawn to will show through in some way, shape, or form, in most cases at least.
Yeah,
Um,
no, I hope so.
um, what is an outside passion of yours that you feel like impacts who you are as an artist?
An outside passion of mine. Well, the problem is whenever I always adopt a bunch of different hobbies, and then I drop them. Like right now, I'm trying to learn to code, but I don't know how long that's gonna last. I was trying to learn how to sew a couple months ago. I know a little bit, but not a lot. I don't know. I guess maybe I love to dance. I've never done it professionally, but that kind of informs I like the way that it it does, like dancing or is so um intuitive, I
Hmm.
guess, and it's so hard to articulate when you're improvising, like where that's coming from. And it's really just such a visceral embodiment of emotion. And I feel very similar when I'm dancing to the way I feel when I'm performing or producing something that I'm very excited about. So I can see some parallels there. I mean, they obviously both have to do with music, but yeah.
Do you think that ever changing hobbies kind of aligns with your ever changing interest in different genres?
That is a good insight. Wow, Dr. Phil who? Um maybe. Yeah. Yeah.
Dr. Phil who? Oh, good Lord.
Yeah, I mean Dr. Phil, I don't really know how, just like the therapy part was what we were getting at. Yeah.
um if you had to kind of set up an ideal listening scenario for someone to like consume your music, what would that kind of look like? Whether that be setting, situation, etc.
Hmm. Oh, I feel like that's so personal. I don't know. I'm really a believer of like, I think it's really important that people make songs that they hear their own. And I think the most exciting thing to me about making music is like, I could make a song that soundtracks someone like falling in love or going through heartbreak for the first time, or attaches to like some corner of a street somewhere where they met someone that's important to them or had this life-changing experience. So I don't really feel like I can define something that's ideal. I guess maybe I don't know. I mean, yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
No, fair enough. I think there is like obviously you get the general kind of situations where it's like if somebody writes a lot of sad music, you're not going to listen to that on your way to a party, like that kind of
Yeah.
thing. But as
Uh-huh.
far as like just the individual experience, it does kind of vary a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, people can interpret different stuff in so many different ways. Or I love songs like I've always loved like disco music, and
Hmm.
so much of like the lyrical content of disco music is like deeply tragic. And
Really?
it's a yeah, like there's just it, like Donna Summer's stuff. She has so many songs about having to work as a prostitute, which is difficult, and like just trying to, I don't know, come up with enough money to live as a person. And I don't know if that was a personal experience or anything, but like so many times, like we're just like jamming to these songs, having a good time, and it's deeply sad, but there's something beautiful about being able to transcend uh, a challenging experience into something that's danceable, I guess. So,
Yeah, that's
yeah.
interesting. I feel like I
Yeah.
pay more attention to the lyrics when it's like a slower, more like stripped down kind of song, not a disco beat by any stretch.
Yeah, it's kind of sneaky, but in
Yeah.
a cool way. Yeah.
What is it that you think sets you apart from other independent artists?
Uh, I guess I don't know. I maybe that I'm not as hungry. I mean, I think I'm hungry for sure, but I won't I absolutely will not do anything that causes me to even shift my vision in any way, which, no shame there. Like, I totally respect people playing the game or, choosing a sound that maybe they wouldn't pick originally on their own, but feels more marketable. But I don't know. I think I'm just like a stubborn donkey. So, yeah. I mean, yeah, I feel like there's other stubborn donkeys, but I'm definitely a very stubborn donkey.
The weirdest thing is that I'm not even I don't even think I'm a full 20 episodes in,
Mhm.
and you're the second person that's mentioned donkeys on here.
What? Maybe there are more donkeys out there than
That
I know. That's
I
awesome.
thought it was random when he was talking about it, and now I'm just like, well, maybe it's a thing.
Maybe hee haw.
I'm kind of surprised that you didn't say that you think your voice is something that you think kind of like makes you stand out, because that is kind of something that you addressed as an initial point of, I don't have the normal pop voice, but I'm doing this shit anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's fair. I don't know.
Own it,
I
Kate.
guess, yeah. Most of the time, I'm just kind of like, you know, I don't know. Everybody is beautiful and does their things. Yeah.
Ultimately, what impact do you want to have with your music, with your artistry overall?
I would love to help I'd love to make some odder elements feel more accessible or be able to give people a larger space to express themselves. I don't know if that's something I can necessarily do. I guess I don't know. I just want to make things that help me feel, and if I can help other people feel things, then that would be beautiful. I try and stay away from like concrete goals, um because I feel like that is so outside, at least for me, of the reason why I do it.
Mhm.
Especially because the music industry at large is so unsustainable in its current form. So I guess for me, I want to keep enjoying it. I want to keep exploring, and I'd love to help people feel things too.
I think that's kind of the great overarching message you kind of want to have. Kind of going back to what you said about like, you don't like, you're hungry but you're not as hungry. I think, and you were talking about the people that just kind of do what's marketable. That's not going to get you as far as doing it the way that you're kind of doing it. Because it's like, if you're doing what comes naturally, you're doing what feels authentic to you. That word gets tossed around more than it should, but like just kind of doing naturally what kind of comes, rather than I'm catering this in this way because that's what's going to be well received. It might not. It might, but then, okay, you're going to hit a point where you're at a limit, and you're going to hit a point where you're at, like, what's the point in doing this? This isn't the way I wanted to do it, you know?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
the more natural you kind of take the approach, ultimately will get you the right people on your side, get you the right people that give a shit about what you're doing. It might not accelerate you to where you want to be, but then you'll end up in an unfortunate position where you got the results you wanted, but you didn't take the right journey to get there.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's so hard because music is such a personal thing, and because of the way things are structured, it's so easy to um lose that from yourself. And yeah, so yeah, I hope so too.
I think that brings us to the last question that I ask, that is kind of the whole concept behind the podcast in the first place, which is ultimately, why music?
Because I can't do anything else. It's one of the most human things, and it's one of the few spaces where consistently I feel super alive and engaged and able to connect with people on a very vulnerable level that usually comes with so many steps of talking and getting to know a person and seeing them over and over. But like, music cuts through all that, and you can just connect at a core. It's like it's the coolest thing ever. Yeah. Yeah, music's amazing.
It's that one hobby that lasted you more than a few months.
It really is. It has infected me, and yeah, it's a never-ending parasite that I love so much.
That's truly a positive way to put the spin on the word parasite.
Yeah, the word parasite's such an interesting word. Yeah, I love, like, do you ever watch those documentaries about insects that like take over people's— insects are wild, man. There's so many insects who will be like super small, and then they'll like bite a beetle in the head and then like hijack the body of the beetle and then become the beetle. I think parasites are fascinating. But yeah.
So my two main takeaways today are to watch more insect documentaries and listen to the lyrics that Donna Summer writes.
I'm so happy. Those are
That's
your
what I'm taking.
takeaways.
That's what I'm gonna spend my afternoon doing today.
I'm so glad. Yeah. I'm a big fan of random rabbit holes.
Well, on that note, I think that brings us to the end of this episode of the Why Music podcast. Check back again next week for another conversation with another independent artist. Thanks for listening.